Hello and welcome back, everybody. Folks, I wanted to start diversifying the show a bit and start touching on some other topics besides politics. So I'm going to talk about something different in this show, something that's not political. I guess it could be. So today I'm going to talk about male to female wage gap. Somebody brought this up some time back, and I really wanted to actually touch on this and talk about a few of the points with this. So, does the wage gap exist? Simple answer is yes, but it may not be in the way that you think or the way that it's been spun by certain special interest groups. So, the company called PayScale Research has access to information for over 8,000 employers, and they've conducted some interesting studies with wages through these different 8,000 plus employers and made some comparisons. And their results might be surprising. So in most uncontrolled studies on this particular subject, the studies include men and women in all types of work. Now, obviously, the diversity of the group will depend on the sample size of that group, but the results seem to be similar across the board in most of the studies that I've actually been able to find. And it seems to be that women, on average, in these different studies, earn anywhere from between 75% or 75 cents to 85 cents on the dollar as compared to men. So that's anywhere from a 15 to 25% difference between men and women in earnings over the course of their career. That seems pretty significant. Now you may be thinking, well, of course, dummy, we already knew this. This is what everybody's been saying. This is what the feminists have been saying. This is even what our politicians have been saying. But is this necessarily the case? Now, I mentioned this is an uncontrolled study. And if you do an uncontrolled study, this is the result that comes out all the time. For example, if I wanted to investigate the medical profession and look for wage inequity, and I selected a whole bunch of female nurses, and then I selected a whole bunch of male cardiologists on the other side, then I could easily say that men earn way more than women. That wage gap would be huge. If we don't compare apples to apples, even though they may be working in the same industry, we will come up with huge wage gaps between men and women. So it's important that we compare apples to apples. This is the importance of doing and conducting controlled studies, which most of these are not controlled studies, which then leads to these kinds of variances, and that's why you get results of 75 to 85 cents on the dollar, and depending on different studies, it doesn't seem to be consistent. So of course, a cardiologist is going to earn more than a nurse, right? And on average, anybody can walk into the average hospital and you can see that there are far more female nurses than male nurses. We won't get into the specifics on that because I think there's many people that won't agree, especially feminists out there. It would be stupid to assume that a cardiologist is going to earn the same as a nurse. And I would also call that a flawed study. So this is how most of these wage studies are conducted. By uncontrolled study. So for the best results, we need to correct for regional differences. For example, a retail worker at Walmart in one state or province may earn more or less due to the cost of living differences in regions. So we can't necessarily compare a Walmart worker in California to a Walmart worker in Edmonton, Alberta. It isn't the same thing. So we have to adjust for demographics. We have to adjust for the regions where we're doing this. This can also be impacted in different cities within the same state or province. So cost of living can impact wages for even the same job. You also need to compare, when you're comparing apples to apples, you need to compare the same position. It doesn't make any sense when you're looking at retail jobs, looking at the manager or the frontline worker and comparing their two wages. You're obviously going to end up with imbalances there. So it has to be the same position and the same time in the position, same qualifications. So these are important things. So this is why this study by PayScale is so good because they have access to over 8,000 different employers and compare wages and take these different factors, do these controlled studies, and actually come up with some interesting numbers. So this controlled study, if we compare a male teacher with 5 years experience to a female teacher with 5 years experience teaching, say, grade 5 in the same city, we'll find a startling result. Their pay rate is going to be the same. When you correct for these controls, men and women earn almost identical amount of money. So what PayScale found was that men and women, the pay gap ended up being 98 cents on the dollar. So women earned 98% of what men earned during the course of their career when they're doing the same job with the same experience. So, and also living in the same region. I'd say that's pretty much equal pay. Now, hold on. There's probably a few of you that are saying, well, it's still a 2% difference. And yes, 2% is a difference. What can we attribute that to? Well, is it discrimination between men and women? No. This can be attributed to the fact that women, and this is a statistical fact backed by many other studies as well, is that women are impacted at a far greater percentage than men when it comes to raising children. Women tend to be the ones that stay at home with the kids and miss work when the kids are sick, at least at a very disproportionate rate compared to men. Women usually end up getting the short end of the stick when it comes to raising kids and taking time off work. So that can attribute to the 2% in the study very easily. Now wait, before any of you ladies out there tell me to go stick my facts and studies in, where the sun don't shine, I'd like to point out that there are discrepancies in some careers that exceed that 98 cents on the dollar figure. There are some careers and some positions where inequity does occur. Now again, when you correct in the studies and you take into account some of the, psychological aspects of this, the differences between men and women, I know there are some people out there that say men and women are exactly the same and men and women think the same. I would venture a wager that, any man or woman, men and women that have lived together could definitively say that men and women think differently. But anyway, I don't want to get too far off topic. Inequity is not uncommon in the corporate level positions or the power positions. There is some inequity here at times. And let me explain before we go, right? So I have to point out that it's only in these positions that you will ever see feminists complain about inequity. Typically, it's always the CEO level and director level positions where you hear feminists screaming and complaining about not having enough, females in these positions or women in these positions, though they will never complain about not having enough female welders and cement masons out there. Funny how that works. But back to the point. Why is there inequity in some of these positions, these higher level power positions? First, there are more men on average that want to get into these positions. So there's a disproportionate number of men that attempt at least to get into these higher level positions. Now, some people might argue that, but more men on average as well are willing to put in the extreme family sacrifice that it takes, the extreme levels of effort and time required in these positions. Now, I'm not saying there are no women out there that aren't willing to do this, but this is a big sacrifice for anyone that is potentially considering starting a family. Another point. Women sometimes take time out of their careers, as I mentioned, to have children. So this will naturally reduce their earnings over a lifetime based on how much time they take off or take away from work to raise a family. Thirdly, women in general, with the exception of maybe feminists and a few others, but anyway, women are generally more agreeable than men. Now, hold on, men. Some of you might be thinking, my wife's not very agreeable. So from a psychological perspective, no, this isn't just me saying this. You can pretty much ask any clinical psychologist and they will tell you the same thing, that women rank higher in agreeability measurements than men on average. women are in general more agreeable than men. This is also partially why they end up getting into more of those people-oriented positions in their careers, more into, the human resources positions, more into the helping of people like nursing. On average, not all. I'm just making a general average statement. This can lead to women taking longer to express dissatisfaction in their position, to ask for promotions and wage raises. So in these corporate level positions, oftentimes women will wait longer. This can also contribute to acceptance of initial job offers. When they get a letter of offer, in many of these professional positions, there isn't set and established wages like there are at Walmart or at McDonald's, where they have a set hourly rate that they have for these positions. They'll have a fairly broad wage range, and they may issue a letter of offer to an employee, a prospective position as a director or manager or CEO position, and it's up to the individual to negotiate. So if somebody takes or accepts that initial offer without negotiating, or without negotiating as much, they may be subject to earning a lower wage. So that can be another reason as to why women in these particular sectors, in the professional sectors, may earn less than men do. Now, these were just a few reasons, of course, and at times there are several combinations of these that may apply to an individual person. So there's numerous different reasons out there, and when you combine some of these, it can definitely lead to wage inequity. But that isn't because of a system that is geared to keep women down. It is simply due to psychology and biology at times. Now, again, as I mentioned, it's not all the time. But anyway, I hope that this could shed some light on the subject, so the next time that somebody says, women earn way less than men, you can have some arguing points to have those discussions. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow where I will talk about the mysteries of the elusive male feminist. You're going to want to see